Welcome back to the show. I'm joined now by Congressman and House Homeland Security Chair Michael McCaul. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A lot going on with you right now, and here basically to discuss this legislation to create a digital security commission. What can you tell us about this? I mean, obviously it's timely, but I know that you've been working on it for quite a while, and what exactly would this entail?
Well, the idea for it came about a year ago. I was talking to the both Director of the FBI, Secretary of Homeland Security about the terrorists' ability to use end-to-end encrypted apps to communicate. Since that time, we saw the Garland attacks where that was used, and also the Paris attacks where they used an app called Telegram to essentially communicate in what they call dark space. So this dark space phenomenon is really the genesis for the commission idea in terms of how can we deal with this issue. If we can't see those communications in advance, even if we have a court order, then how can we stop a Paris-style attack in the United States? We saw just recently, yesterday, ISIS with a video declaring its intention to carry out a Paris-style attack in the United States. So we think the commission is urgent, it's necessary. The Apple iPhone case happened subsequent to this, but it just raises the complexity and relevancy for this idea.
What exactly would the commission look like? From what I've read, 16 members on it, and just kind of who that would be made up of. And I know that this has gotten bipartisan support so far. Right.
Senator Mark Warner, who's on Senate Intel and is a tech entrepreneur, has joined with me in introducing this. It was drafted very similar to the 9/11 Commission. We believe that this digital security issue is so complex and so relevant that to get the best and brightest minds together to advise the Congress on what action we need to take. And it would be comprised of stakeholders from both the tech sector, so high-tech privacy advocates to federal law enforcement, state and local law enforcement, and the intelligence community, all sitting down at the table to provide solutions to the Congress.
Do you think, you know, I know that there have been some privacy groups that have had some concerns just about privacy and whether that this would cater to law enforcement. What would you tell them to get on board and to, you know, calm those fears?
Well, each stakeholder has an equal representation at the table. So, you know, when I talk to law enforcement, they have the same concern about privacy sitting at the table. But the fact of the matter is they need to sit at the table together to work out these problems. Right now they're talking past each other. This will force them to sit down and mandate a consensus and a resolution and potential legislative solutions. So it's gotten broad-based support, as you said, from both tech community, from law enforcement. The intelligence community has been supportive, and a lot of outside groups as well. So we feel very optimistic.
You mentioned the Apple FBI fight over access to data on that locked phone from one of the shooters from San Bernardino. Do you think Apple should have to cooperate?
It's a very complicated issue. On one hand, and I was a federal prosecutor, you have the FBI with a court order, a dead terrorist phone that has evidence on it that could lead to potentially another suspect. And so it's a very serious issue. When you talk to Apple, they will tell you that they designed this device so that it couldn't be broken into. It secures people's private data, both healthcare and financial and other data, so that it can't be opened up. And the only way it can be opened up is that they develop special codes to hack into their own device and expose and create a vulnerability in their product that will have ramifications globally. And then they're concerned about countries like China then taking these codes and breaking into phones over there. So it demonstrates the complexity of the issue, and I think why this commission is so necessary and so relevant.
You know, do you try to fast track this? Kind of how do you move forward, especially in an election year and trying to get this passed quickly?
Well, I think the good news is because we are getting the broad-based support both in both chambers of Congress and both parties and from all the relevant stakeholders, and we anticipate. I know the Secretary of Homeland Security has expressed his support as well. So I think this may be one of those rare moments where we can actually get something done on a very important issue.
Starting with bipartisan people trying to get it in place, so maybe there will be some hope there. I also wanted to talk to you about your book, Failures of Imagination, The Deadliest Threats to Our Homeland and How to Thwart Them. title kind of explains it, but what can people read here? What did you try to get across in this book?
Well, it's based on the 9/11 Commission's findings that 9/11 was really caused by a failure of imagination, not being able to see the fact that airplanes could be turned into cruise missiles against our interest. And so what I try to do is have an honest dialogue with the American people about the real threats that we face as a nation. We create fictional scenarios of what I consider to be the deadliest threats, and then a fact-based, almost like textbook on counterterrorism, the world that I live in, and then a policy piece on how we can stop these threats from happening in the future, both Islamist terror-based to cybersecurity chapter to Mr. Putin and his aggression, taking all the top threats I see globally and putting them into a book. People say, what keeps you up at night? This is kind of one of those books that everything that keeps me up at night. It's not exactly a bedtime story book, but I do think it's a public service value to the reader, and all the proceeds go to wounded warriors and their children.
Do you, think that a lot of people in your community have read this and have taken to heart some of the things that you're trying to address?
Well, they have. It was #1 on Amazon, bestseller under national security. I know a lot of policymakers have read the book, members of Congress, people in the intelligence community, in law enforcement. So I think it's, it's an interesting read. The fictional scenarios, I think, get the attention of the reader as to what could happen if we don't change our policies.
Some of the rhetoric, just while I have you here, I wanted to talk just about the campaign trail. Some of that's dealt with national security, some with immigration. And some people have said that it's frightening to some extent of what some of the candidates have said. Do you think that America would be less safe with Donald Trump as president?
Look, whoever the nominee is, any of these candidates, I think they're going to need advisors on national security, which I consider to be the #1 issue facing the nation. My book was a counter-narrative to the administration's false narrative, if you will, about the threat level, because it's, I think, a lot higher than what has been telegraphed. And so whoever it is going to need really top national security advisors on how to deal as commander-in-chief. Whoever it's going to be is going to be in charge of the military, in charge of the intelligence community apparatus, and homeland security in a very dangerous world that's becoming more and more dangerous, in my estimate. So, yeah, does the rhetoric help things? I think in some ways this hyper blames that part of the world and helps ISIS with their recruiting. So we always have to be careful about what we say, because they are watching and they are listening to us.
Congressman Michael McCaul, thanks so much for being with us. We'll have to get you back and talk more about this commission as it proceeds. We appreciate it. We will be right back.